So today I'm going to be talking about friendship and fatherhood and why connections matter. Um, Thanks everyone for coming along today. I know that you're taking time out of your busy schedules, and I really appreciate taking your time out of your busy days to come along. So thanks very much for coming along. And oh, there we go. So I'm going to start out with why I started thinking about men and friendship and dads and friendship. And it really started with the 2024 Dad Survey. So this was a survey that was put out last June, and we've done a subsequent survey this year called the 2025 Dad Survey. But this is from last year. And our dad surveys, we've done 7 now, dad surveys, and they've charted the journey that we have all been on together, but dads in particular, since the very first lockdown during the pandemic. We've done 7 um, surveys now, and it gives us an idea of how dads are coping, I suppose, and what their lives are like, both at home and at work, what they're struggling with, if they've got any issues with their mental health and well-being. And we also ask a series of wildcard questions every year. So we have a series of questions which remain the same year on year, and then we have each year we put in a sort of set of questions that change. And last year we put in a series of questions about how dads were integrating into their community. So whether they felt able to get involved with their children's activities, whether they felt comfortable with getting involved with activities with their children in their local communities. And finally, we asked dads about their connections to parenthood. And this is what we found out. So we asked dads whether they feel connected to other parents in their local community. And I was really shocked about the findings from this. So as you can see from this data, 28% of dads said that they almost never connected with parents in their local community. And then a further 30% said that they didn't connect with dads very often. And I find that really, really shocking, I have to say. And I think that if this finding was of new mums, there would be a call to action almost immediately around this. But I realized that things are slightly different between men and women, but I wanted to get to the bottom of why dads aren't connecting with other parents in their local community. So it's sent me off down this rabbit hole, and this presentation is kind of part of me trying to answer that question in a way. So at the same time that I was putting together the results from last year's dad survey, I was also reading this book. It's by Robin Dunbar, who I'll come on to in a minute. He's quite a famous professor from the University of Oxford, and he just written this book called Friends. And on the back of the book, there's this piece of blurb that said, "Friends matter to us, and they matter more than we think. The single most surprising fact to emerge out of the medical literature over the last decade or so has been that the number and quality of friendships that we have has a bigger influence on our happiness, our health, and even our mortality risk than anything else except giving up smoking." So it was clear to me that dads not engaging in friendship with other parents was a real issue. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what Robin Dunbar says on the matter of friends as we go through today's talk. So I'm going to start off with that. I'm going to talk about human friendships and about Dunbar's number. Dunbar's number, obviously, after Robin Dunbar. I'm going to talk a bit about the difference between the sexes when it comes to friendship. I'm going to talk about gender stereotyping and what happens when men become dads. And then we're going to talk, or I'm going to talk about what do men or who do men turn to when things go wrong, particularly new dads. So where do they go for support when things go wrong? And lastly, I'm going to talk about if friendship is important for dads, and I would say that it's important for everyone. What should we do about it? So, what should we be doing? What should dads be doing? And what should we be doing as professionals as well, to support dads? So, as I said, I'm going to start off with Dunbar's number and why we can only maintain 150 relationships. Doesn't seem that many, does it? So this is Robin Dunbar. As I said, he's a professor of evolutionary psychology at the University of Oxford. And way back when he started his academic career studying monkeys in Africa. And he was amazed by the complexity of their social relationships and their social groupings. And the more he studied monkeys, the more he realized that the grooming behavior which they participated in, so we can all remember, mums grooming their babies and, adults grooming each other. A lot of that behavior actually wasn't for hygiene reasons. It wasn't just to pick out bugs and stuff from fur. Actually, it was more to do with establishing social bonds. So it's not just about looking after each other's health, it's actually about developing connections. And the more he studied these animals, the more he realized, these monkeys, the more he realized that their social relationships and their social groupings were really actually very like human friendships. And he came up with this hypothesis. He thought that the, the size of monkeys' brains was directly related to the size of the groupings that they were in. So you can see that there's two red squares on the slide on the right-hand side. You'll see our massive, big human brain next to our nearest cousin, really. So this is chimpanzees. And he noticed that chimpanzees, their social structure, so the groups that they exist in, are between about 30 and 50 chimpanzees normally. And he looked at all sorts of different monkey groups and looked at the size of the social groupings that they had. And he made a prediction that he thought that chimpanzees um, uh, brains, or there was this correlation between the size of the brain and the grouping size. So we know that chimpanzees can cope with about 30 to 50 members of their group. And so he suggested that humans, given the size that we've got about 4 times the size of our neocortex, a new part of our brain, compared to the chimpanzees, he thought that human brains, we should be able to cope with about 150 people in our social grouping. So that was his hypothesis. Oops. And he tested his hypothesis by looking at various different social groupings. So he looked at military units, and yet military units often have groups of about 150. He looked at English villages in the Doomsday books, and he found out that again, the average village in the Doomsday book around the 11th century had, guess what, 150 members in it. The average wedding guest list, 150. And guess what? I mean, back in the day, we probably do this a little bit less these days, but Christmas card lists for us humans, it's about 150 on our list. Now, obviously, there are fluctuations in this, so these are just the average units, the average measurements, but it gives you an idea that this Dunbar's number we can find everywhere. So why are we restricted? We're really smart creatures, and we think that we've got these amazing computers on our heads. Why have we only got the capacity to deal with 150 relationships with other people? Well, I mean, I suppose it's relatively simple. So our relationship to these 150 people, so it's not just about our relationships to them. So if you can see on the left-hand side of the slide, this is our relationship to a small number of people. But actually, that's not the only thing that we have to consider when it comes to friendship. Actually, we have to think about our friendship to our close group of friends. So it could be, I don't know, Shona down the road and Alan across the road, and uh, my mum who lives with me, and my kids, and my partner. But actually, all of those people within that grouping will have relationships to each other. So my kids will have a particular relationship with my mum. My mum might not get on with Andy down the road, and so on and so forth. So actually, what we have to do as humans is not just about understanding our relationship to other people, it's about understanding the relationship that they have with each other. And that's what social groupings are all about. So monkeys can do that, or sorry, chimpanzees can do that with between 50 and 60 group members. And at which point they tend to get schisms in their group, and you'll get, once you get over that kind of that limit, the group will separate out and they'll become two different tribes. For us as well, we start to get fragmentation and siloed situations within workplaces, within groupings, where you tend to get people feeling more comfortable in division. So Gore-Tex, actually, who I'm sure that you've heard of, they're a kind of sportswear manufacturer. Uh, um, Really regularly, they are highlighted as one of the very best companies in the world to work for. And actually, they've kind of realized that this 150 sort of number of people, and you'll see actually this grouping on the right-hand side of this slide is members of Gore-Tex, one of their divisions. Once their divisions get beyond 150 people, in order to maintain cohesiveness within the working environment, they'll split off. So they'll create two divisions where there once was one. So they're sort of using um, the capacity of our brain really to make good business sense for them. So um, this is Dunbar's number, and just to give you an idea of this 150 figure. Now, Robin Dunbar wasn't stupid, and he realized that not all friendships were the same. And he kind of drew attention to the fact that we have these different circles of friendships. So right at the center of our groups of friends, we have our kind of intimates. They're our loved ones, and that's usually around about 5 people who are really, really close to us. So it's our children and our partner, and maybe our parents, who are in that really, really small group of people right at the center. And then we might have another 15 good friends, really good friends, who, if something went wrong, you pick up the phone to them and they'd help you out. You then have another 50 friends. So these are people that you feel really comfortable with. And then overall, this whole group, you'll have about 150 meaningful contacts. So you can see that there's 2/3 of our time, Dunbar suggests, of our social time is spent with just 15 people. So 40% of our time is with that really close group of loved ones. And then an additional 20% of time is with good friends. And I suppose it begs the question, well, what about all those people on Facebook and Instagram who have hundreds of followers or hundreds of friends? Well, they fit into this kind of additional, these additional rings or circles of friendship. So there's 500 acquaintances. So it's people that you might know, that you pass on the street, and someone else in the village that you live in, or a town that you live in, someone that you used to work with, and so on and so forth. Or it might be, particularly when it comes to social media, just people that you recognize. So it might be famous people, or it might be someone that you knew from a very long time ago, people that you recognize, but not necessarily acquaintances. So that's the circle friendships. Now, there's a difference between the way in which men and women have friendships. Now, I'm talking about friendships in general. So obviously there's differences between men and women, but I'm talking in generalities. So in general, when women tend to prefer the company of other women, and 70% of women's social network are other women. And when it comes to other men in their social groups, it tends to be most cross-gendered friendships tend to be someone from the family. So it could be uh, brothers-in-law or sisters-in-law or grandparents or brothers or whoever it is. So that makes up most of that cross-gendered group of friends. Women tend to really value emotional connections. They prefer really intimate didactic relationships. So they'll tend to be much more open and honest about their relationships and share much more intimate details about their lives. And you'll see from this image that women are more than happy to chat facing one another. So they'll talk, about what's going on in their lives, and they'll sit and chat facing to one another. And it's slightly different for men. So men prefer, similarly to women actually, but men prefer the company of other men. So 70% of most men's social networks are other men, and similarly, that kind of cross-gendered relationship tends to be within the family. They're different from women in the fact that instead of this didactic relationship that women tend to prefer, that kind of best friends model, men tend to prefer the anonymity of groups. So they'd rather get together as a group of men to chat rather than that kind of intimate one-to-one setting. And also, instead of chatting face to face, men tend to chat across, they look across to each other. So they'll tend to be at about a 120-degree angle, which is really interesting. And actually, I have to say, it's Robin Dunbar's book that put me onto this. But actually, if you look at most such social situations and look at men talking to one another, you'll see that women will be facing each other and men tend to be at this 120-degree angle. And I think there's a really good reason for that. And that has to do with testosterone, I think. Anyway, so obviously men and women both have testosterone, but men have much higher levels of testosterone, so about 10 times more than women. Testosterone is released into the womb of a pregnant woman between 6 and 12 weeks. And that release of testosterone leads to the development of the male genitals. It influences the development of boys' brains, and it drives male children to select male gendered toys. So it has an influence on child development. And it obviously influences boys, their change in hair growth and their body shape during pregnancy. Also, higher levels of testosterone. The reason that men have higher levels of testosterone than women is that higher levels of testosterone are the higher the levels of testosterone, the greater success men have at attracting mates. So it's aligned to a stronger competitive drive in men, and also women tend to prefer men with higher testosterone. So they'll pick men with higher, or women will tend to pick men with higher levels of testosterone as their mates. So testosterone is linked to this drive to succeed at attracting mates, and in my opinion anyway, it might be the root of why we have particular masculine stereotypes, what society expects for men, and how men measure themselves up against other men. So there's often discussion about masculine gold standards. So these are traditional attributes and behaviors that society expects of men. So these may not be the case these days, and certainly this is up for debate. But certainly some of these gold standards are about men being powerful, being independent, being efficient and rational and competitive, as we've talked about, successful, in control, and really importantly, actually, never vulnerable. So they're not vulnerable emotionally. So that kind of notion of stoicism. So given that, there is a tendency for men to really prefer clubs. So when I talk about clubs, it can be in all sorts of areas of life. So it can be in your profession, so where you go to work. It could be religion. It could be educational, so the school you went to, the university you went to, the sports clubs that you're involved with or support, hobby groups. So this is one of the right hand side. This is a group of gamers who all like to come together. So hobbies, interest groups, and of course kinship groups as well. So that extended family. And what researchers have found is that men really enjoy and work more effectively in clubs. So in these kind of these social settings, and that club frameworks actually allow men both to compete, so this kind of competitive drive, and also to cooperate together. So I thought I'd show you two very different types of clubs, but actually show their similarities. So you can see on one side we've got Hell's Angels, and on the other side some Masonic lodges. But actually, interestingly, both of these different types, very different types of these different types of clubs, have some very similar attributes. So they both have rules and rituals, and that regulation, all that kind of the rules and things that are set down that everybody has to adhere to, regulates the competition between men. And men tend to differentiate their social groups or their loyalty to a group by equipment and dress, sort of things associated with their group. So you can see with the Hells Angels, it's Harley Davidsons, it's the patches on their back, it's the black leathers. And for the Masonic Lodge, they're all wearing white gloves. They've all got these medals. They're sitting, I mean, they're very much around rituals and these strange objects that all set them apart, show that they're part of this group. And we're all familiar with Masonic rings and so on and so forth. So even though they're polar opposites, these two groups, you can see that there's actually there's marked similarities between them. So the next section of what I'm going to talk about is what happens when men become dads. So as men men become dads, often their testosterone drops quite significantly. And that's really to help men focus on their families. Um, there was a really good study in the Philippines about fathers. So they took, I think it was about 190 men who were not in relationships, and they charted their progress over 5 years. And they found that the men who had the highest testosterone levels within that group settled down and started having children. And by the end of that study, they found that this group who had these children, their testosterone levels, they'd gone from the highest level of testosterone level to the lowest level within that group. So we can see this change in testosterone level over time as men become dads. And as I said, that drop in testosterone allows men to better focus on their family, and it allows them to be better dads, actually. It allows them to show greater empathy and affectionate care towards their children, and actually to focus on mom, to focus on the family, and to focus on looking after their children. Now, it's not just about this change in testosterone. As I said, it's really, really important that dads focus on looking after their children. So, I love this idea that fathers are not made are made, not born. So, even though dads go through quite significant changes as they become, or men go through quite significant changes when they become fathers. Um, the important thing about them becoming really good dads is actually the amount of time that they spend with their children, and actually lowering that testosterone level really facilitates that. So it allows dads to focus on their families, and spend more time with their children, making sure that they're parenting effectively, and the more time that they spend one-to-one with their children, the greater levels of affectionate care, threat detection, and problem solving um, that they go through. So fathering hasn't stayed static over time. Modern fatherhood is very different from fatherhood in the 1960s. So you'll see this is an image of a dad from a Ladybird book that was published in 1965. So mum definitely taking on the her more than her fair share of looking after the children there, and dad sitting in the background with his paper. And in 1965, the average dad spent just 18 minutes per day on childcare. Now, if you fast forward to 2015, this is a dad's book that was published in 2015, and you can see that dad is helping to tie up his son's shoelaces, and he is very much getting involved in domestic chores. So he's putting away, washing, and looking after his child. And at this point, dads were undertaking about 72 minutes of childcare per day. So a really significant change during that time. And we can see this in the studies that have been taking place more recently. So COVID had a really significant impact on fatherhood. As you can see, back in 2014, dads were undertaking about half the amount of unpaid childcare that mothers did. So for every hour that mums were spending on childcare, dads were spending about 32 minutes. During the first lockdown in 2020, that skyrocketed to 53 minutes. So although mums were doing more childcare during that time, dads were fast catching up with mum. Fast forward again to after the pandemic, 2022. Dads during the pandemic really felt as though they were missing out on real quality time. They'd realized actually that spending time with their children and helping them to learn and helping them develop was something that they didn't want to give up actually post-pandemic. And so we can see actually the significant change in 2022 with dads um, undertaking 39 minutes of unpaid childcare to mum's hour. So even though mum is doing more, dads have really stepped up their effort pre and post pandemic. And again, if we look at the figures around stay-at-home parenting, this is from the ONS back in 2019. It was just 1 in 14 dads who were staying at home to look after their children. Again, fast forward to 2022, that's then 1 in 9 dads, which is good news, I think, for both dads and for women and mums. But all of this kind of comes at a price, and this is something that mums certainly have been dealing with for a very long time. But this struggle to juggle for parents is really significant. So this is from last year's dad survey. So we asked all of the working dads who participated in our dad survey how they were finding balancing work and family life. And you can see over 50% told us that it was either very difficult or difficult. So 12% told us it was very difficult, and then 39% in addition told us it was difficult. And we can see that actually over time, balancing work and family life has become increasingly difficult for dads. So back in 2022, 5% of dads told us it was very difficult. This increased to 6% in 2023, and then 12%, a whopping 12% last year, who told us it was very difficult. And one dad said it's tricky balancing. It's a tricky balance to strike, and I rarely feel I get it right. I either feel guilty about working or I feel guilty about spending time with my family. So this kind of strain on providing, dads providing for their family and dads being there, being present for their children, was something that dads have been feeling acutely recently, certainly from the data that we've been collecting. So for dads, for new dads, it can be a bit of a perfect storm. We've talked a little bit about the hormonal changes. So in addition to testosterone, dads go through quite a shift in their hormones. Um, Up until quite recently, we just thought it was mums who went through significant hormonal changes during pregnancy and childbirth. Actually, dads do too, and their brains change as well. So both mums and dads go through a period of significant neuroplasticity around the time of childbirth, to really prepare themselves and be able to take on the responsibility of very little babies. So dads are going through these hormonal changes, particularly this drop in testosterone. There are these gendered social expectations and norms. So dads are expected to be the breadwinner, but also expected to be an emotional support and be a present father. Um, Generally, there's this expectation that men should be self-reliant, they should be physically tough, they should have emotional control. And also, although I think this is probably changing a little bit, uh, certainly historically, caring for babies and being involved in with childcare and certainly very little babies is certainly historically been seen as quite feminine activity and for men who are quite weak. So again, these are just a couple of quotes from dads, just to underline some of these issues. So dads saying that torn by between wanting to be there and earning enough money. I feel like I'm two people. And my partner uses all of her energy and patience on the baby. So sometimes I can feel like an emotional punch bag. We've had some really big arguments. It's been really lonely at points. So these kind of emotional issues that come up for both parents, but obviously I'm talking about dads at the moment, we can see, and some of the reasons why. And also, of course, when you become a new parent, there are lifestyle changes. So sleep deprivation particularly can be really devastating. There can be a strain on family finances. So if mum is taking time off on maternity leave and you've got another child to look after, obviously there's strain. We're going to come on to this, but often the group of friends and confidants that dads have to rely on gets smaller, particularly if men within their existing social groupings are the first to become parents. So the life of a parent compared to the life of a man who isn't a parent can be really different, and uh, they can lose friends during that process. Also, dads can often talk about a sense of loss around this time. So losing the lifestyle that they used to have. So they might have enjoyed going out to the football or going out and watching music or, going to the gym. And all of a sudden they've got to focus on their family and focus looking after a small child. So they feel this kind of sense of loss and almost a grief actually about this change in their lives. Many dads have an uncertainty about their role, and that's particularly acute if men haven't had any positive male role models or very few positive male role models in their life. So they don't necessarily have a template for how to father. Also, there's a shift in family can be a shift in family dynamics. So you're going from a relationship between two partners, and all of a sudden, when you've got a baby, or actually when your family becomes two or three or whatever, the family dynamics can shift, and that can put strain on relationships. And just again, this demand on both mums and dads to balance competing demands. So whether it's worth, work or family or self-care or existing friend groups. Actually, there's just this competing demand. So for new dads, there's this perfect storm. And as one dad said, burning the candle at all ends, no downtime, no time for self, workload ever increasing, financial worries, cost of living crisis, etc. Just about reaching my mental and physical burnout. So dads can often be, new dads can often be in real need of friendship and real need of support. And we can see this again in the dad survey data, and also just the information that we know about dads during the perinatal period. So anxiety and depression are not unusual for men going through such big life transitions. And the data shows that between about 8% and 26% of men experience paternal perinatal depression. This rises to about 25 to 50% of men whose partners experience postnatal depression. And anxiety disorders in new dads can be up to about 51% in the postnatal period. And we can see this. So this is data from the dad survey. And we can see the chart at the top. This is dads with a child under 1, talking about their current mental health. And as we can see, 16% of dads told us that their current mental health was very poor, and compare that to 8 and 10% of dads with a child between 1 to 2 and 3 to 5. So there's obviously this significant change, or this significant area for concern with new dad's mental health. Now, I've got to say a big thank you to Connor. So when I was putting the slides together for today, I realized really that I'd used Clint Eastwood as this kind of archetype for male stoicism, for this kind of notion of enduring pain and hardship without kind of complaint. And I thought, well, that's probably, for my generation, that's probably an archetype. But actually, what about for millennials? And I was asking Connor, who's definitely more of a millennial than me, that's for sure, um, what a modern equivalent would be like. And he came up with this the Star Wars character. But just to kind of give you a sense of the Mandalorian is, these archetypes are true throughout history, and we'll always come up with them. But the Mandalorian might be a more recent equivalent. But these kind of figures, and I suppose it's about these gold standards of masculinity. It's about what often men aspire to, really, is the archetypal kind of best version of men. So it's about this notion of enduring pain and hardship without displays or feelings, and without complaint, and it comes with ideas of manning up, and boys don't cry, and playing through the pain, and taking it like a man, and so on and so forth. Um, but obviously, if you're going through difficult times, as a man, you may have this exterior kind of tough stoicism, but actually the issues come out in other ways. And so often under stress, even though men may appear to be stoic, actually masking behavior, or other types of behavior become more obvious. So these masking behaviors can be self-medication. So that could be alcohol or substance abuse. It could be an overcommitment to work, particularly with new children, actually. So men wanting to avoid going home, they'll stay late at work, they'll overcommit and say, well, it's because I'm providing. Men often gamble, they take risks. Often this avoidance or denial can result in infidelity, and sadly, it can also result in anger and violence. But all of this masking behavior often hides underlying emotions like fear and sadness. But this masking behavior often just makes the situation worse. So it begs the question, so where do these dads go for support? So they might not seek support, but often dads will look very close to home for support. So this is another question that we ask dads within our dad survey. So the dads who have told us that their mental health has deteriorated in the last 6 months, we asked them what kind of support that they looked for or received, and we gave them multiple choices, and they could choose the ones they'd used. And as you can see, by far and away, the biggest source of support for dads, younger dads, dads with younger children, are their partners. So particularly for dads with a child under one. So you can see that 80% of dads with a child under one shared how they shared how they felt with their partner. This group was much less likely to share how they feel with friends and family, although it's still quite a high number. So 80% shared how they felt with their partner, 32% shared how they felt with friends and family. And as time went on, that number grew. So by the time that dads have children, youngest child between 3 and 5, that's up to about 50%. Dads are much less likely to seek support from GPs or other professionals, and often don't seek support through helplines or support groups. And sadly, around about 16% of new dads are not looking for any sort of support at all. So just to give you an idea of where dads are going for support. And as one dad said here, I haven't looked for any support. It's easier just to push through. So again, it's that giving that sense of that male stoicism of just pushing through and not expressing what's going on emotionally. So new dads and friendships. So just overall, this is information from Movember that was collected back in 2016. And it was a piece of research into male friendships in the UK, and it showed that about 1 in 4 men in general, so this is all men throughout the UK, made contacts with friends less than once a month. 1 in 10 dads couldn't recall when they last made contact with a friend, and 1 in 8 do not have any friends that they would discuss a serious topic with. So, you know, it does beg the question, where do men go when they need support? And how do we avoid this masking behavior? How do we avoid dad suffering, and then the impact then on families and children? And I suppose to make the situation worse, as I kind of alluded to earlier, it's not just men in general who don't reach out and look for friendship. New dads particularly lose friends when they or often lose friends when they become dads. And this is another great quote from our dad survey. My relationship hasn't been the same since my baby. My release mechanisms and coping strategies of seeing friends and exercise have stopped. I can't do all the stuff my wife does, and I didn't experience the psychological changes like my wife. I'm just the same guy, but I feel like half the one I was. So just to give you an idea of how dads are feeling at that kind of crucial time of becoming a father. Um, so going back to the very first slide and what started me on this journey about thinking about dads and friendships, um, and that terrible bit of information, I suppose, about how few dads are connected to parents in their community. And I looked at this data by the age of the dad's youngest child. And you can see actually that dads, particularly in those early years, so dads with a child 5 and under, are particularly divorced from other parents in their local community. So 31% of dads with a child under one said that they almost never had any connection with other parents in the local community. And as you can see, those with children between 1 and 2 and 3 and 5, it's over 50% of that group said that they almost never or did not often feel connected to parents in their local community. And of course, that has significant impact on not just the dads, but actually their children and the family as a whole. So lacking that sort of social interaction with other parents is not great for them, but it certainly isn't great for their children and probably the family as a whole. And when we asked dads within the dad survey to give us more information about what puts them off getting involved with community activities and other parents, they told us about practical reasons, which I haven't listed down here. So often it's about time, or often when time is really short, they just want to concentrate on uh, seeing the family unit. So being together as a family unit. There was often issues about not having groups within their area, that sort of stuff. So practical stuff. But actually they told us about the emotional stuff. So why they didn't feel like they wanted to connect. So many dads told us about a lack of confidence, so their shyness or social anxiety. So one dad said, usually it's my own shyness. I've noticed this being reflected in our daughter, so I'm trying my hardest not to do so, but I naturally feel really uncomfortable socializing. Poor mental health can also be an issue. So one dad said poor mental health, wanting to avoid people, which of course is the same for many people struggling with poor mental health. Um, Also, social constructs that we've talked about a little bit before. So that kind of getting involved in groups with younger children is just not much of a dad thing. And another dad saying, I find that not a lot of dads consider socializing with parents as be part of their parental duty. Another dad actually talking about how ashamed he felt to be out of work, so how he would be perceived by others because of his circumstances. Many dads found the 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 spaces or the activities that were available were often really female orientated and dominated. So one dad said, I feel I need to be very mindful of everything I do and be very respectful as a visitor to a space with mother and children. And other dads, although it's quite a small number, um, said that they were often viewed with suspicion in those environments. So one dad said, "Can feel like I'm in the way of mother talk, or there's caution around an adult male around the children, even though I'm with my own." So these dads kind of not feeling comfortable in those early year settings. So, going back to that original quote from Robin Dunbar about friends mattering to us, and they matter more than we think. So, what should new dads do? So, I think that we probably need to set this in context. I think that families, certainly from the dad survey data, families are really struggling with time, and we have to see that as a real struggle, that kind of struggle to juggle. So there's a limit to what both mums and dads can do in a day. But I would also say that investing in friendships is really necessary. It's really necessary to create space where you're investing time, not just in your wider friends group, but the friends right at the start, right at the heart of our the core of our friendship group, so that those intimate relationships, our loved ones, making time and investing time in those friendships is really important. And then making sure that even just putting some time in reaching out to um, other friends, maintaining those friendship groups, because when something goes wrong, they're the group, they're the people that we can often rely on as well. So, close friends and family are really, really important to help us get over really difficult times in our lives. So for dads, checking in with mates, it's one of the simplest but often the most powerful thing that we can do as a friend. Just, sending a text, picking up the phone, popping round to say hi, just checking in with people is really important, shouldn't be undervalued. Um, Making a point of checking in with someone close to you if you think that they're struggling or you haven't heard from a while. So if there's a kind of red flag, just making sure that you're checking in with that person. And when you do check in, start small. So if you think that there's an issue, and particularly when it comes to guys, start small, keep the stakes low, and do everything that you can to make them feel comfortable about opening up because they've got these kind of ideas around masculinity that might prevent them. And I really like this quote. It's from Dr. Ratcliffe from King's College London, and he was saying that the opposite of male loneliness is could be keeping busy, a sense of purpose, a feeling of pride become because of one's contribution to the world, and having a sense of belonging. And to me, what he's describing are lots of groups that dads could be involved with, or lots of men could be involved with. So, if we think about male loneliness as a whole, and actually male loneliness potentially when men become dads, actually groups are really great for dads to get involved with. So for dads, joining a club, getting involved in a club is really, really helpful. Sadly, there are not enough men's or dads groups across the UK, and certainly not in Scotland. Dad's Rock is an obvious example of a brilliant dads group in Edinburgh. There are dads groups scattered across Scotland. I think the numbers are increasing a little bit, but certainly we could do with far more. But this is a quote again from our dad survey, but it was about Dad's Rock playgroup. My child loves them, and I get the opportunity to interact with other dads in person. It's really important. They're really valuable. Dad's Work, which is an organisation based in East Lothian. Obviously, they have lots of dads coming to them and getting seeking support and receiving support. Uh, and they've been running for years, actually over 20 years. But this is a dad who'd received support from Dad's Work. When they were younger, Dad's Work was a lifesaver, and I now feel honoured to help other parents. So getting involved, so if you've been in a group, then getting involved and volunteering for groups is a fantastic way of giving back. And actually, you get a huge amount from volunteering. I'm certainly a volunteer in my local community, and I get back far more than I give out, I think. And finally, this is Andy's Man's Club. There are Andy's Man's Clubs all over Scotland. There's also lots of other peer support group for men. I'm delighted to see that the number is rocketing across Scotland and local groups pinging up everywhere, actually. But Andy's Man's Club meet at 7 o'clock every Monday evening, and it's a peer support group, and it helps men in general. So you can just rock up, you don't have to talk, you can just be in the room. But I think that Andy's Man's Club and these peer support groups are doing a massive amount um, to destigmatize men seeking support and reaching out and talking to one another. So as this dad said, I'm really not sure I would be here today to tell this story. This is the first time I've admitted it. The support offered by Andy's Man's Club is immense. So these groups for men are really needed, and they're really important actually, and we probably need more of them. So, before I finish, oh my goodness, I'm just about on time. Just to say that if for dads and professionals, we have a father-friendly directory. So if you want to find groups around Scotland and beyond, our directory should be able to point you in the right direction. If you want to find out more about how you can create a dad's group or become more father inclusive, we have free training sessions on our website, and Connor will send out an email to help you get started with that. We also have lots and lots of case studies on our father focused hub. So if you want to find out how other organizations or how other people have done it, our father focused hub is a great way to get that information. And I think that's about it. So I'm almost out of time. I'll stay on for another 10 minutes if anybody's got any time. But before you go, if you could give us your feedback on today, that would be really, really helpful. And there is a link in the chat. And finally, very finally, we are in the process of writing up the dad survey data from this year, from 2025. We'll be releasing it, I think, on Men's Health Day, International Men's Day, I think Wednesday, the 19th of November. So keep your eyes and ears open for more information on that. But that's what we're hoping to do. So it'll be the first of 2 reports. But thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And if you've got any questions, I'll happily field them. But lovely to see you all, and thank you very much for coming along.